Hi, I am Christine Whitmarsh. I am CEO and founder of the Inc. Agency, Inc. I-N-K. As a ghostwriter, I tell extraordinary stories for a living. Now let's talk about how to tell your extraordinary story of grit, of growth, resilience, integrity, and tenacity, and how passion and perseverance drove that grit. And since brevity is the art of great storytelling, let's talk about how to tell your story in 500 words or less, which is about a Microsoft Word page. It's several paragraphs. You have just enough to work with to tell a great story. Tip number 1, zoom in. Now, your story of grit may last days, weeks, months, years, lifetime. You still may be in it, but the greatest short stories are the ones that find that special sliver, that whether it's the most profound, dramatic, impactful, something that really teaches the lesson that you want to share with others with, again, the most impact. So think zoomed in on this versus trying to include everything. If you try to include everything, try to include a spotlight on in 500 words, then you'll end up really either confusing people or really sharing nothing. The adage goes, try to say everything, you say nothing. So think laser beam when choosing the story that you're going to share with us. Tip number 2, work backward from the aha. So think of the lesson of grit and how that was driven by passion and perseverance. Think of the lesson, the greatest lesson that you can share with all of us so that we can be inspired to find grit in our own lives. And rather than trying to just start with a story and work up to that, think about that lesson and craft a story backwards from that lesson. So there's a quote that says, start with the end in mind, and that really applies to the situation. So rather than once upon a time, start with the end and figure out how to get us there, if that makes sense. Work backwards from the aha. That way you're seeding the lesson all along your story as well. 500 words, but you're starting from the beginning and telling us what you're going to be teaching us. So that really adds a lot of power to your storytelling. Tip number 3. Bring your story to life using fiction writing techniques. Now, just because this is a nonfiction task doesn't mean that you can't play Spielberg on this. Doesn't mean that you can't include the same kind of fun that novelists and screenwriters have. So you can use dialogue. There are no rules here. Use dialogue, use drama, use tension. I really, really love when stories open just with that hook, with right in the middle of the scene at the highest pain point, and then work backwards and bring us there and then tell us what you learned. I like to have just an author, a writer, a filmmaker get my attention from moment 1. So I would encourage you to just be as dramatic as possible to get our attention. Think of if you're doing a 30-second movie trailer and how you're really going to make the audience say, I need to see the rest of that movie. So bring your story to life with fiction. My bonus tip today is every story must have a beginning, a middle, and an end. So think of that arc. It's an Act 1, Act 2, Act 3 arc that typically starts with the inciting incident, the thing that really put you in a situation where if you didn't show grit, you were going to go down. So you had to, bring together your resources, everything you had inside of you to get through this incident, whatever this incident was in your life. And then Act 2 would be how you got through it and the lessons you learned along the way. And then Act 3, the end of your story, is the resolution and the greatest lesson that you can share with us. Now, if you don't have this easily packaged bow on top lesson, we're still learning, most of the lessons that we've ever learned in life, we're still learning them. Come up with the best lesson that you can for this story. This is why it's so important, back to my first tip about finding that right slice. So you find that right story and a lesson that you can share with us versus I'm still learning. So that's my bonus tip. And in conclusion, if grit is the airplane, think of passion and perseverance as the engines. Tell us your story of how you flew when nobody knew you could. We can't wait to read it.